Greetings and salutations, comrades. Hope this finds you well. I just wanted to go over a little bit about what has been going on with the U.S. again trying to extradite Julian Assange to the United States for the crime of being a journalist, for the crimes of exposing the war crimes of the U.S. empire. Just think about how topsy-turvy, how Orwellian that is, that instead of actually, maybe investigating like the collateral murder video that, WikiLeaks published, people that were innocently murdered, including those two, I believe, Reuters journalists, right? Instead of going after the actual people responsible and the higher ups responsible for those war crimes, they're trying to literally criminalize dissent, criminalizing Julian Assange, who, again, this is the biggest threat to press freedom that, we've faced in the United States for, probably since Daniel Ellsberg and the Pentagon Papers, right? And this effort hasn't let up at all under the Biden administration. Again, the Biden Justice Department is still continuing the same effort that, was started under Trump, right? And it all, I think, part of it obviously has to do with the CIA Vault 7 leaks and the CIA's dirty secrets getting out there, right? So it's from the dissenter, Kevin Gottstola, I believe. Appeal hearing: CIA's War on Assange, their most prominent critic, takes center stage. No extradition, free Julian Assange, 100%. CIA's record of retaliation against WikiLeaks. Again, this is the second day of this extradition trial, right? Founder Julian Assange, including reported plans to kidnap or assassinate him, was focused on during the second day of the United States government appeal hearing. It was part of the Assange legal team effort to convince the High Court of Justice in the UK of the gravity of the risk which Assange would face if they overturned a district judge's decision to allow extradition. Mark Summers, Queen's Counsel, when Assange's attorneys contended this was the first time the U.S. had sought the assistance of the UK court in obtaining jurisdiction over a person the U.S. government agency has planned to poison or assassinate. This is worthy of an investigation in retaliation to these assurances, Summers added, referring to the pledges involving how they would treat Assange. U.S. government offered these assurances with the hope of salvaging their case. January 4th, District Judge Vanessa Barretzer concluded it would be oppressive to extradite Assange to the U.S. because of his mental health condition. However, she kept him detained at the Belmarsh High Security Prison while the U.S. government pursued their appeal, which, again, that is also oppressive, to his mental health condition, to keep him in this maximum high security Belmarsh prison, right? Assange was charged with 18 offenses, 17 of which are under the Espionage Act, which, again, he's not a citizen of the U.S. He's not a spy. He's being persecuted as an example to others. This is what happens. This is the kind of treatment you can be exposed to if you expose the crimes of the U.S. empire, right? The law passed in 1917 has increasingly been wielded by the Justice Department against media sources who disclose classified documents or talk about sensitive information with journalists. After 2 days of proceedings, the High Court indicated it would take some time to fully consider all the arguments and issue a decision. Let's hope, obviously, they come out on the right side of this, but who fucking knows, right? It should have never gotten to this point to fucking begin with. But whatever they decide, there'll still be a cross appeal that defense has indicated they plan to submit to challenge the parts of Barretzer's decision that are particularly threatening to press freedom. Also, both the U.S. government and the Assange legal team are likely to appeal to the UK Supreme Court if they're unsatisfied with the judgment of the High Court. The assurances now offered are as follows. The U.S. government will not designate Assange for special administrative measures, SAMs. The U.S. government will not send Assange to ADX Florence, it's in Colorado, Supermax prison if he is convicted. Assange will receive clinical and psychological treatment as is recommended by the prison clinician, and if convicted, the U.S. government will allow Assange to apply for a prison transfer to serve his sentence in Australia. Again, this is a death sentence. I believe these charges add up to 170 years in prison, and you can't trust anything the U.S. government is saying with regards to how they would treat Assange or that he would be, be able to serve his time in Australia. But it's all fucking bullshit, dude. Can the High Court trust the government? No. Altogether, assurances from the U.S. government turn on the trustworthiness of them. The defense would start from the basis that they're offered in good faith, but if the High Court allows them, Assange's attorneys would like to hold a hearing where they can call witnesses and submit evidence in order to determine the reliability of these assurances. Defense noted in their submission to the High Court one agency with power to recommend SAMs to the Attorney General on the basis of some unspecified act they perceive Mr. Assange to have committed is the CIA. Again, the same organization which WikiLeaks published that Vault 7 documents. Yes, the very same agency whose criminal acts Mr. Assange has sought to expose and who are under active investigation in Spain for plotting to kill him. The issues are stark and not capable of being grappled with properly by this court without knowledge of alarming evidence adduced below. Assange's legal team is referring to Yahoo News report published in September under the headline Kidnapping, Assassination, London Shootout Inside the CIA's Secret War Plans Against WikiLeaks. It revealed the legal significance of CIA Director Mike Pompeo's redefining WikiLeaks as a non-state hostile intelligence agency in the first speech he gave as the agency's director in April 2017. Pompeo became obsessed with Assange and WikiLeaks after the publication of Vault 7 materials that exposed the CIA's cyber warfare capabilities. He oversaw agents who escalated a disruption campaign against WikiLeaks and permitted hacking into the personal devices of staff and individuals viewed as associates of the media org. Agency was allowed to paralyze WikiLeaks' digital infrastructure, provoke internal disputes within the org by planting damaging info, and even though there are no members of WikiLeaks, they could try to steal WikiLeaks members' electronic devices. Plotting against Assange led to proposals for kidnapping them in the summer of 2017. They discussed breaking into the Ecuadorian embassy where he was, I think, for around 10 years, right? Where he's living under political asylum in order to put him on a rendition flight. Agency executives requested and received sketches of plans for killing Assange and other European-based WikiLeaks members who had access to Vault 7 materials, said a former intelligence official. There were discussions on whether killing Assange was possible and whether it was legal, the former official said, the Yahoo News report further revealed. As Summers contextualized the damning nature of this report, he linked it to evidence that was put before the district judge involving UC Global, a Spanish security company that Yahoo News story largely confirmed had passed audio and video footage from cameras which were spying on the embassy to the CIA. Again, then we're supposed to trust, the CIA who would be in charge of these conditions that Assange would be facing. Give me a break. What we're talking about with Spanish evidence is potentially a tip of the iceberg, Summers added. Trying to convince the High Court of the threat the CIA poses to Assange, Summers also noted Joshua Schulte, the gentleman alleged to be Assange's source for Vault 7, is currently 2 years into SAMS, defending a distinguished psychiatrist attacked by prosecutors. During the morning argument, Assange attorney Edward Fitzgerald, Queen's Counsel, defended neuropsychiatrist Professor Michael Koppelman. Could you turn that off, Christy? Who Lewis sought to discredit during the first day of the hearing. The U.S. government would like Koppelman's expert testimony, which concluded there was a very high risk Assange would commit suicide if extradited, to be ruled inadmissible. To get it thrown out, the prosecution claimed Koppelman fell his duty to the court when he withheld the fact that Stella Morris was Assange's partner at the time, and that she was the mother of his 2 young children, which were conceived while he was living in the Ecuadorian embassy. The reason he initially withheld that, because it wasn't public knowledge. Airing out that Stella Morris was Julian Assange's partner and, the mother of his 2 children would have had hugely disastrous consequences for her and those kids. He did the right thing, obviously. At the time, Koppelman became aware of the revelations of extreme and unlawful surveillance of Assange's family's legal team, but he still wanted to adhere to his obligation to the court, Fitzgerald said. Koppelman testified in 2020 that he was concerned about the privacy and safety of someone who had expressed a wish for their privacy to be respected. 24 hours before he submitted his initial report to the judge, he sought legal advice from experienced human rights lawyer Gareth Pierce, the head of the solicitors firm representing Assange. But Pierce herself was facing a mass of documents which had to be served on the court at that time, including submissions that related to surveillance, attempts by CIA to obtain their children's nappy to compare DNA to that of Assange, and plans to kidnap or poison Julian. Like, literally stealing dirty fucking diapers to get the DNA from it. This is the level of just depravity that the U.S. empire is willing to stoop to criminalize and persecute and make Julian Assange's life hell. And they've been doing a great job at that, right? And this continues. Pierce was simply overwhelmed with the issues to be addressed. She was not able to secure legal advice to Koppelman about his query before his initial report was due. Far from being the actions of a dishonest actor, Barretzer determined that Kopelman's omission, though misleading, had not misled the court. She was already aware of Morse's identity before she read Kopelman's initial report. What Kopelman did was very human response under all the circumstances, Barretzer wrote in her decision. Prosecutors tried to make light of the phrase, a very human response, treating it as meaningless. However, Fitzgerald noted that within the context he described involved UC Global Spine, it made perfect sense. To defend the professional reputation of Kopelman, the opinion of Professor Keith Ricks, a recognized expert in the ethical duties of psychiatric experts, was shared with the High Court. According to Ricks, Kopelman acted professionally, responsibly, and exercised appropriate and reasonable caution in not disclosing the full position of his initial report. 100%. Assange informed U.S. medical expert of his relationship with Morris. Fitzgerald challenged U.S. government's claim that they weren't shocked to discover that Morris in relationship with Assange, especially because Assange informed Dr. Nigel Blackwood, one of the U.S. government's preferred doctors, that he was in a relationship with Morris. He told him about their child 2 days before applying for bail in March 2020. Morris provided a statement in support of Assange's bail application on the basis that having a partner in a committed relationship with Mr. Assange, who's also the mother of his 2 children, would help reassure the court that he would abide by bail conditions. Yet, Lewis Mock, again, this is the attorney for the U.S. Empire, Lewis mocked the idea that Morris and her 2 kids' safety was of any real concern precisely because she opened up her identity to potentially being discovered by supporting bail for Assange. Lewis also contended Assange had actually informed Blackwood of his relationship with Morris because he knew the information would become public anyway due to the bail application, something which is not guaranteed since they sought an anonymity order to protect her privacy. These remarks ignored the obvious point that Assange and his family were engaged in balancing their desire to protect their privacy and the safety with the understandable objective of freeing Assange from what at the time was 7+ years of confinement, first in the Ecuadorian embassy, then at Belmarsh. In fact, Lewis told the court when Morris pursued the anonymity order that the prosecution was neutral and took no position on whether it should be granted. True crime is journalism, 100%. Assange's defense characterized him as the CIA's most prominent critic, especially because the information that is the subject of the prosecution, including details of war crimes, torture, atrocities against civilians by the U.S. government and the CIA in particular. He is a witness against the CIA in a criminal case that are unfolding against their conduct in Spain, Germany, and before the ICC. The CIA views Assange as hostile enemy of the United States who poses very real threats. His attorneys assert there's no reason to believe that vengeful attitude will not be reflected in his treatment should High Court allow him to be placed in U.S. custody. 100%. This is, again, to make an example of him, to make journalists, whistleblowers think twice before, releasing this type of information about the crimes and atrocities committed by the U.S. empire, including, organizations like the CIA. Outside the role of courts of justice, where over 100 supporters gathered, WikiLeaks editor-in-chief and award-winning Icelandic investigative journalist Kristinn Hrafnsson sought to remind the crowd what this case is all about. Quote, "This is a political persecution of a journalist who exposed war crimes and the secrets of the United States. We're here because a journalist is being persecuted for doing his job," Hrafnsson told a cheering crowd. "The true crime is journalism. This must end." This was Kevin Gotzola, Mohammed Almazi. So good work. Definitely support both of these folks. Definitely give both of them a follow. I follow him. I need to follow them as well on Twitter. He does a really good job breaking down kind of the day-by-day goings-on of this extradition trial. Obviously, free Julian Assange. If anybody deserves to be in prison, it's the people responsible for committing these war crimes, these atrocities, the torture, etc. Not Julian Assange. Again, his only crime is being a journalist and exposing those atrocities. Like the video if you like the damn video. Subscribe for more content. All part of the people. Quick shout out to the 2 Uber comrades supporting my channel and this content on Patreon, my partner and Independent Left News. Definitely check them out. They're great.